You're watching the Eternal Tournament Series.
Welcome back, everybody, to the ETS Season 1, Week 8. We're in Round 2. I am Gabe, also known as Calendir, and here in the booth with me is LocoPojo to break down all the action.
Yeah, guys, we got an exciting matchup today. We got Mr.Bombito on a really interesting Praxis mid-range build with Danibor on Felm Scar Control. Yeah, this is looking like a pretty interesting matchup. We have the three-color shenanigans that we haven't seen in a while, using Statuary Maiden, Champion of Cunning, Black Sky Harbinger, and a big pile of removal, including 4 of the In Cold Blood, which people seem to be very fond of right now. On the other side, we have Mr.Bombito on Praxis mid-range with the Jek Hunted Fugitive and 2 Sky Terrors in this list. I'm actually really interested in this list. There's a lot of cool things going on here, including some synergy with Jek Hunted Fugitive, Sky Terror, and Reliquary Raider, which I think is a really solid addition to the Praxis mid-range list that definitely is cool to see, and hopefully we'll see a bunch of it now that it is a 3-cost 1/3 with some really cool draw abilities.
Yeah, Reliquary Raider is always one of my favorite cards. I don't know how I feel about it now after the change, but I'm definitely excited to see how it plays out.
I love the new design. I think it's really solid.
Yeah. Jek Hunted Fugitive, also a card that I think deserves to see more play in a lot of these Praxis decks. So, really cool. In addition to Sky Terror, there.
Yeah, the two of them work really well together, Reliquary Raider and Jek, just because Jek's attacks give the Reliquary Raider a little bit of extra defense and a little bit of extra push, and those are the two things that the card doesn't have access to. So being able to buff it up with Jek, as well as use cards like Xenon Obelisk to increase its toughness, means that this card sticks around a lot more and also becomes more and more of a threat as time progresses. Praxis decks really want a consistent card draw engine, and they also want ways to stabilize their early game, and Reliquary Raider is doing both of those things for this deck, so yeah, I'm pretty psyched. I'm hoping that this goes really well for him.
Yeah, I imagine it could be okay as well with Xenon Initiation to remove something like an Oni Ronin and draw a card.
Yep, yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. Danibor, on the other hand, playing the sort of standard removal pile. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there as well. The Statuary Maiden is a bit of a win-more condition, but certainly this deck has an amazing late game with Champion of Cunning, Black Sky Harbinger, and the Statuary Maidens. Beyond that, like, I think that the overall unit base is not doing a whole lot, but there is enough like straight removal, especially in the form of the 4 Annihilates main board, that is going to make it pretty hard for a mid-range deck to get by.
Yeah, I mean, Statuary Maiden is just a very powerful card in any deck based around removal. Looks like we're probably about ready to get into this matchup, as we see the opening hand here has that Statuary Maiden in it on Danivor's side. I think I'm favoring the Felnscar deck a little bit, just because I think they're gonna get the 1-for-1 removal they want. There's gonna be so many targets for them, and then they're gonna have a little bit more card advantage as the game goes on with Wisdom of the Elders and the Statuary Maiden Cudgels plus Channel the Tempest.
Good. There's a lot of good stuff going on there. Crest of Fury coming down and Seed of Cunning looking pretty good. We have the Sabo in hand to actually just throw some stuff out of the Praxis deck, including like its killer stuff. Danibor's looking okay. He's got access to enough power to really get started on his curve, and as long as Bombito doesn't really just sort of punch him out, I think he'll be in pretty good shape.
Mr. Bombito does have the the 3 of a kind in his hand, though. 4 drops over there.
Yeah, Firemaw into Firemaw into Firemaw into Firemaw is a pretty good play, especially when your opponent's only sitting on 2 torches as opposed to an Annihilate. If Danibor had access to Annihilates, like any amount of them, then this would be a much different story, but the Firemaws are very scary here, and Danibor has to find answers to all of them.
Yeah,
but the Wisdom of the Elders, this gets him a little closer.
Yeah, Danibor does have 4 Annihilates in his main deck. He's not seeing them right now, but they are there. He'll find them eventually.
Eventually may be too late. Statuary Maiden comes down, but there's no double torch, so Bombito's going to get at least 1 discount off of Firemaw, which means that he gets to play even more threats even faster. All of Danibor's stuff is single target removal. Firemaw's hitting is actually really bad for him, and his crests are not pulling up his Annihilates or other cool cards. He has access to a Channel the Tempest, but he's going to have to bury it, and he's going to have to really figure out something to do with these Firemaws fast.
Yeah, so it looks like the first one's probably going to get, or one of these is going to get double torched here. I feel like that's Danibor's only option.
Yep, it's got to die, and it's got to die now because he's on a 2-turn clock.
And yeah, like you were saying, and I will reiterate, the Crimson Fire Maw's activation is extremely powerful in this matchup, just because all of Mr. Bombito's cards are fairly expensive. He's going to get a ton of value out of anything he draws that gets hit by that activation. Plus, the tempo advantage in this matchup is huge when Danibor's just trying to trade one for one, card for card, and stall the game out. It's going to be very difficult now.
Yeah, Danibor picks up a Channel the Tempest. I thought that he put this on the bottom of his deck, but he may have actually put it on top. Okay.
No, he drew another one.
Okay, just 2 Channel the Tempest stacked in a row.
I mean,
no Annihilates. I think he's pretty dead. Another Crimson Firemaw comes out here, and that's going to be another 5 in the air. Jack Hunted Fugitive is on the board, so at this point he's got lethal. I think even if the Firemaw is removed, it's definitely lethal. He can attack with a 2/2 Temple Scribe and a 6/5 Crimson Firemaw, and Danibor just doesn't have a great option here. However, the Black Sky Harbinger will give him a trade.
Yeah, Black Sky Harbinger will keep him alive for at least one other turn. Take care of that Temple Scribe before it gets the weapon on it. Yeah, Danibor playing 4 Annihilate, also playing 4 Channel Tempest, though.
Yeah, it's a good thing that Black Sky Harbinger has that extra point of attack now, because that does allow it to trade with Firemaw and actually get Danibor some amount of advantage. However, it's not going to trade if a Jekk's attacking, so this is still looking really bad. Danibor goes ahead and quarries. I don't think he has an answer that he can quarry for here.
Yeah, I think he had to play a Harbinger. I think you just gain the 5 life, you trade with a Firemaw, you maybe chump block Jekk or something. You try and dig for an answer to Jekk next turn.
It's fairly meaningless either way here, just because he's got one. Yeah. He has only one answer, and that means that basically he's all of his stuff is single target. Yeah, so regardless of whether or not he plays the Harbinger or the quarries, he just gets to basically get the one thing dead. And with the one thing dead, that's not good enough. And so either way, it's just one draw, and it's not enough to stop the current board.
No, I think he lives if he plays the Firemaw, or if he plays the Harbinger, because he gains 5 life, chumps 2 creatures. Because obviously he can't trade, because I forgot about the Jekk plus, but he still chumps
he'd
2
live
creatures.
for one more turn, but it would be functionally the same. It's just one extra draw either way.
Okay. Well, with that, we're gonna go to sideboard. That was a pretty impressive showing from the Praxis deck. Do you think we're going to see a repeat performance? Do you think the Felnscar deck is going to be able to either make their deck a little more functional post-board, or that just wasn't a great performance out of them?
This Felnscar deck is not very proactive, and a lot of the good of it is reliant on cards like Torch and Lightning Strike. I don't know if there's anything new that Danibor can add in beyond cards like Feeding Time. If he's just playing single target removal, I think it gets pretty hard to get control of this game. However, if he draws a hand with, say, at least 2 Annihilates, then yeah, he has a chance.
Yeah, I think Annihilate is the most important card, just because it comes down early enough. In Cold Blood we didn't really touch on it. I've seen a ton of people, both on ladder and tournaments, on posting deck lists online, that have just elected to play in Cold Blood over Death Strike, which maybe it's just because it's a new card and people want to play it, but I'm not really sure.
I don't think I approve of it in the main board. I think Death Strike is already a pretty inefficient card, and without the fast spell component of it, you're losing out on an awful lot. People do not like Justice decks right now, apparently, so they're just going to kind of be knocking Justice decks down a little bit. But void binding Justice cards isn't actually all that important of a thing. You don't really need to care if you get a certain amount of copies of a particular Justice card out of someone's deck, unless it's an armory card like Ikaria, or your one of that you need.
What if it's Tavrod, though? The cow god himself.
If it's Tavrod, I think Death Strike does the same thing as Feeding Time for the most part. As long as you are removing at least the copy that matters, you're probably fine. The chance that your opponent is going to play 2 Tavrods a game is still pretty slim, and much, much lower than people think it is.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you, but I definitely see people wanting to play with new cards here. So we do have our opponent, or our players, getting into game 2 here. Taking a look at Danibor's opening hand, He is gonna have the mulligan this one. It's only one power, only one shadow sigil. Can't cast any cards in his hand.
Yep. Yeah, we see the crest of cunning here and the seat of fury. There's a torch and a Caleb's. A couple of different options here, but Danibor does not have that early hand that I was saying is what he probably wants. In the meantime, Bombito not looking quite so good either. He's got a Dawnwalker available, and he gets a fire out of this. Oh, but he elects to pitch it back and picks up something with a very similar setup. He's got Purify into Dawnwalker. I don't know that the Purifies are actually helpful for him at all. I'm kind of surprised that he's still running them.
I think that he probably just doesn't have. He has enough cards that he just doesn't want in the matchup, and it's a little better than Torch probably. If you probably cut Torch first.
Yeah,
Uh,
there's not a lot that you run in here. There's Flame Stokers maybe, Soulfire Drakes maybe, but Scorpion Wasp and Grenadin Drone don't really make a huge influence on the board. So
Yep. Because being able to at least silence Maiden and Cunning and Harbinger are all fairly relevant.
yep, yeah, it's useful to silence Maiden sometimes because that card is pretty scary if it gets on board.
Especially,
and it also means that you get your Dawnwalkers.
yeah, exactly. Especially when you're deck running Dawnwalker like Mr.Bombito is here, and we're gonna see this Maiden come down right on turn 4 this time.
Yeah, that's a
Huge.
bit of an issue because Bombito does not have the fire influence to play Fire Maw here. So he's going to roll a Sandstorm Titan. That's probably going to get annihilated right away. Although if Danibor wants to safely annihilate for the Crimson Fire Maw, I certainly wouldn't fault him since he's playing a Statuary Maiden next turn.
Yeah, I think there was an argument to saving it, and there's definitely an argument to trying to be a little greedy and get a cudgel out of that annihilate. But Danibor taking the safer play, the more tempo efficient play, using that annihilate on his opponent's turn and getting the Statuary Maiden down now.
Yeah, Bombito gets lucky, finds the extra red for his Fire Maw. He still needs a third red for either Heart or Jack, but getting those two cards is actually really key to sort of winning this matchup. The earlier that he gets them, the more just general development he gets. He gets to basically play down these cards, get his Dawnwalkers back, attack in for weapon stuff, and Danibor still kind of trying to find his removal, find his draw. Will have some issues if those cards come down early. If it takes a while to get them out, Danibor's going to have answers to them.
Yeah, well, Danibor's going to have a pretty nice turn next turn where he's able to play the Statuary Maiden and torch the Dawnwalker, but he elects to just trade off the Statuary Maiden now and deal with it later so he can play his Crest, give him a little more time.
Yeah, I don't know if I like that play all that much. It doesn't really stop damage because the Statuary Maiden was damaged for 3. So he only gains 1 health out of that exchange. And of course, the Dawnwalker comes straight back.
Yeah.
Although I guess he gains 4 here because the Dawnwalker's not attacking this turn.
Yeah, that makes sense. I kind of agree. I think if you had the guaranteed kill on it next turn, you might as well wait for that. But here he gets to use it, and he gets to deal with that Heart of the Vault as well. So now he's got 2 cudgels.
Yeah, 1 heart gone, cudgels on the board. He gets the torch, but he doesn't have the Caleb's choice available right now, which is fine because Bombito's not playing all that many spells. Bombito does have a Shatterglass Mage on top of his deck, so if he wants to, he can knock a cudgel off of the Statuary Maiden. And it's kind of in his interest to do so since that is a card draw. The main problem here is that he really wants to play Fire Maw into Sandstorm Titan, so he's left with a pretty rough choice.
I think Mr.Bombito, Statuary Maiden is obviously just the best card against Mr.Bombito's deck. There's not a lot of flying threats outside of Fire Maw. Sandstorm Titan grounds the Fire Maws. So it's really hard to get through Statuary Maiden in general, and Mr.Bombito's removal kind of relies on the size of the opponent's unit. Not a lot of cards like Annihilate or anything like that. So not an efficient way to deal with a Statuary Maiden once it gets big like this. And now Danibor can just sit here with this Maiden, keep drawing his removal, keep making it bigger, and eventually start attacking. Or even right now.
He's swinging for the fences already. Jack Hunted Fugitive coming down is pretty okay here, but In Cold Blood is on top of Danibor's deck, so Danibor's just going to be trying to push for Statuary Maiden lethal as quickly as possible. We see the Shatterglass Mage knocking a little bit of damage off of the Statuary Maiden. That actually is really solid here because it means that it's not as much pressure, it's a slightly lower clock, and he'll probably be able to defend with another unit next turn and kill this Statuary Maiden with a double block.
Yeah, it's still going to be 2-turn lethal here, but Mr. Bombito does have, like you said, a double block available to him next turn. But that's going to be not great. It's going to put both players in top deck mode, and Danibor is the one with Channel the Tempest.
Yeah, Bombito can play Temple Scribe into Reliquary Raider here, push for 5, and just sort of like use the Reliquary Raider or the Temple Scribe to be defensive as opposed to trying to get this double block set up. I think
Yeah,
that's a
he
pretty
wins that
solid play
race.
here, just because there's no way that Danibor has more than one removal spell.
You say that, and then he draws Wisdom of the Elders.
Yeah, he could pick up like double Annihilate here, and that would be the game. But instead, he
it's-
picks up some units.
Yeah, Quarry and Filmblockmaster. Quarry pretty good here though. But yeah, now that these chump blockers are available for Mr. Bombito, Danibor cannot freely attack because he won't get the chump blockers before he's dead to this Shatterglass Mage.
Yep. He's put Danibor back on the defensive, which is good because the Statuary Maiden on offense is very, very scary. Jack Hunted Fugitive offers potential lethal, and Danibor is now a power away from lethal himself. He finds an Annihilate. That's a pretty important card here.
Yeah, that's huge because Jack would have maybe enabled him to start attacking pretty soon. And now he's really far away from that.
Yeah, we see a 4/7 and an 8/10. Channel the Tempest is going to be 6 damage as long as Danibor can draw another card, which he doesn't currently have access to, so it might only be 5. But I think the way he's currently pushing, he's in pretty good shape.
This is a pretty ambitious attack when you already have the Channel the Tempest in your hand.
Yeah, I think Bombito's trying to get the value down a little bit, but Temple Scribe is a pretty obvious block here, so doesn't put Bombito that much closer to death. Does mean that he'll eventually have to block that Raider.
I really don't like that attack because it allows Mr. Bombito to potentially draw a card off this Reliquary Raider now. If for some reason that were to be a thing. But obviously that's still not great and not a great play for Mr. Bombito.
Yeah.
So it ends up being fine.
Yeah, we see he's got the double block now that's kind of nice for Statuary Maiden. Danibor can actually draw a card off of the top of Bombito's deck, which is pretty nice. We know that there's no Heart of the Vault off there, so it's not going to be an absolutely sick play, but nonetheless, I think that that might be the option here, or Danibor can just sit on his Caleb's choices and wait for Channel the Tempest to get going.
Yeah, if things get dire enough, he can always just trade in his Reliquary Raider for a new card and give Danibor
I like this attack. Good. I kind of like using Film Bloodcaster first, but I agree that keeping the Caleb's choices up might actually be a pretty good idea. So we see a 6/9 in here, and Bombito has to decide whether or not he wants to block with Reliquary Raider and try to push for lethal, or do something else and just set up. Now, we know that a Torch is not going to secure a lethal with 2 Caleb's choices in hand, so the double block is probably correct, but with Channel the Tempest on board, Danibor is looking pretty likely to win this in the late game.
Yeah, Danibor definitely super favored from this position. Notable hits for Caleb choice, Xenon Obelisk, which may or may not have come out. It is a bit slow. Obliterate and Torch, so that's going to keep Danibor very safe.
Yeah, so now Bombito has to deal with a 10/12, which is too big even to double block. aReNGee gets down here, and it is something that he can aggress with, but Danibor basically, if he attacks, is going to die, so that's not great. But yeah, with 5 damage off of a channel, that's almost lethal, but not quite. Danibor can wait for 1 turn and get it, or he can go ahead and kill that 5/5.
Ooh, and had that gone well, either way, he would have been okay here.
I think that went okay for Danibor. He's in a bit more control of the situation now, but there are some issues with basically if there's just enough that Bombito can do, then I think that might be pretty good for him. He could attack for the Reliquary Raider and the Shatterglass Mage. He'd lose the Shatterglass Mage, then he'd have to play his Reliquary Raider into a pretty bad position. I don't think the attack looks good for him, and he's kind of slowly sitting still waiting to die to the more advantageous route.
Ooh, that's not a bad card at all.
Yeah, I think that's actually probably the way that he wins here, is Soulfire Drake combined with potential Shatterglass or something along those lines. That could be really good for him here.
Not while Danibor has a Torch up, but yeah. Danibor, though, Channel the Tempesting that aReNGee, saying it was pretty okay was we only said that just because of how good potentially just winning the game immediately off channel was, but drawing 3 cards, removing a unit, and getting a cudgel is always a little more than pretty okay.
Yep. At this point, the Statuary Maiden is pushing into the 5/3. Bombito can't really win this, I don't think. He can deal 6 to face, and then torches get Caleb's choice because Danibor's holding on to 3 of them. So Purify is close to the answer he needs, but it's just not good enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say, is there another charge unit he could draw or something? But no, not play. There's nothing he could play in addition to the Soulfire Drake that wins him the game here.
Yeah, it's just your standard 5/5/2, and if that Purifier were a torch, he still wouldn't have it, but he can kind of wish that he did.
And that Channel Tempest is gonna seal up the game here for Danibor. Our players are 1-1. We're gonna have a game 3.
Yeah, the storm is unleashed, and we're going to see at least one more round. I'm really surprised that Danibor is still running these Caleb's choices. Like, they don't kill anything. They stop Torch, which is probably not enough. They kind of helped there, but like they weren't actually ever played.
Yeah, I don't think they're great. I agree with you, but they do hit Obliterate as well, and they do stop Xenon Initiation.
Yeah, I guess there are 2 Obliterates in Bombito's list. The Xenon Initiation's not an awful hit either.
Yeah, and it does hit Obelisk if those stay in. In the sideboard, it would potentially hit a Flamestoker, but against a deck that plays Statuary Maiden, Flamestoker is not a good card, so I really doubt that we're seeing that. So probably it's just the 2 Obliterates, potentially some Torches if they even stayed in, and the Xenon Initiations, which I'm not sure if that's worth it.
Yeah, well, in any case, players are already into game 3, so we'll go ahead and take a look and see what they're up to.
Danibor with another 1-power hand. Gonna have to mulligan that away.
Yep, it's a pretty easy pitch here, although the Seek power makes it a little bit more appealing. Not too much more appealing. Seat plus Crest. This is about as bad as the previous hand, and maybe even worse.
I mean, this Crest could maybe get him a little closer to power, but once again, no Annihilates. And yeah, pretty slow on the power. Is going to have to draw a lot of power off the top of the deck just to be able to play his cards out on time. And even then, he's not playing cards until turn 4, which I think is a little too slow against the very proactive strategy that Praxis has.
Yep, we see an Amber Waystone played down by Mr.Bombito. We don't have access to his hand cam just yet, but we should hopefully soon. Crest of Cunning is playing to get a Crest of Fury, so Danibor is actually looking good on power for the next couple of turns.
Yeah, that helped a lot there, the double Crest.
Yeah, we see Crest of Fury is basically, Danibor setting up power here. Bombito's trying to set up threats. Bombito has made double time happen, but he hasn't played any banners or seats, so he's going to be a little difficult for him to get things like Crimson Firemaw down if he doesn't have exactly the right power here. Fire's
he does
a
have
good
that
start.
Crest, though. So yeah, next turn, he doesn't have a great play next turn, so he might just play that Crest. Now Statuary Maiden is down, blocking this this Dawnwalker, and with a Black Sky Harbinger on the horizon, that could be huge.
Yeah, I think Danibor's units line up really, really well here. He has access to the Champion of Cunning, which is a pretty decent big unit. Bombito's got to throw the Purifies at the Statuary Maidens just so that they don't get out of control. And the Black Sky Harbingers are pretty good answers, especially with, ooh, wow, that Xenon Initiation on the Dawnwalker, though. That's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, definitely a big deal, especially since he gets to get value out of it while there's no Statuary Maiden on the board. Put it in the Void. So now, even if Danibor draws another Statuary Maiden, he'll still be able to get that one more activation out of that Dawnwalker.
Yeah, we know Bombito has access to the Crimson Firemaw now, so he's going to be able to play that Dawnwalker back. And doing that on an empty board is really kind of critical because it means that Danibor is forced to torch the Dawnwalker before anything else happens. He can't play his Black Sky or his Champion of Cunning into the Dawnwalker.
Yeah, don't really want to lose your card for nothing. The other big thing here is that Dawnwalker critically doesn't die to these Harbinger summon effects anymore.
Yep. So we see a Champion of Cunning, which has Aegis, but it's dead immediately to Dawnwalker. So Danibor's going to have to throw the torch basically whenever. Yeah. Goes ahead and does it here. That seems perfectly sensible. And then now the question is whether or not Bombito's going to attack into the Champion.
Yeah. I think I don't know if did Mr. Bombito play a power this turn?
He did not play power this turn.
Yeah. I think I would have liked to hold the torch just in case it was something like Soulfire Drake to make him play it pre-combat to not get the Dawn Walker back for like an extra turn. But that's super minor and wouldn't have been relevant anyway. So who cares?
Well, we see an in cold blood coming out against the Reinarch. Bombito's basically considering attacking in for 6, and that's, just a perfectly good amount of damage. Another Dawnwalker comes down, but that one's going to die to Black Sky Harbinger and even gain Danibor a life just for being played. So Danibor's got some stabilization tactics here, but he's still got to deal with a 5-2 Dawnwalker that is just really being a consistent threat.
Yeah. Got a lot of card advantage generated on Mr. Bombito's side, even though he hasn't actually drawn cards, with things like Wisdom of the Elders, Channel of the Tempest, the way Danibor does. This Dawnwalker is so much virtual card advantage that it's kind of ruining Danibor's control game plan here.
Mm-hmm. Danibor has to decide between In Cold Blood on the Fire Maw to prevent the discount and Black Sky Harbinger to basically just keep his life total stable and trade with the 5-4 or the 5-2.
I like this play because dealing with the Fire Maw is a little more permanent. This Dawnwalker is going to stick around for a while.
Yeah, Dawnwalker's not going anywhere. Bombito gets to play down World Bear Behemoth this turn, and that means that he'll have the influence and power for his Soulfire Drake and Heart of the Vault, hopefully in short order. It's possible that he pulls some time sigils off of the World Bear, but not terribly likely. I think that he's got a better than average chance of playing some fire off of World Bear.
Yeah, very likely here that Dawnwalker takes care of this. World Bearer comes in, and then we see a Heart of the Vault come down. Or just another World Bearer
Crest of Impulse doesn't get him power 6, but it does get him the influence he needs. So we'll see a Heart of the Vault next turn.
Yeah, and another World Bearer is going to just be lethal with this Torch or Heart of the Vault.
Yeah, there's not much Danibor can do here. The control deck does not have sweepers. This version is not running Witch Combo, which is a fairly common way of getting rid of the big Praxis stuff. But he's just overwhelmed, and now he's down 2-1. So Bombito takes it.
Yeah, Mr. Bombito on Praxis, they're going to take it over Danibor on the Felonscar control deck. Generally just a good matchup for Praxis, I think, because even though I sort of favored the Felonscar deck, I think against typical Felon lists of old, Praxis was a bit more favored because both decks have card advantage, but one is the aggressor, even into the late game.
Yeah, and Praxis has a lot more advantage now in the form of Reliquary Raider. That is just a key card in terms of making sure that you're always able to get that card advantage going if your opponent is not playing proactive threats. So yeah, just a lot of good stuff in the early game. The Dawnwalker Xenon Initiation combo turned out very well. I think that Bombito really had a good deck there, and I'm pretty happy with the changes that he's made to the Praxis mid-range archetype. I think that Jack and Sky Terror are both great.
Yeah. Like you said, his deck just has so many good threats in it compared to other decks. But we're gonna move on. We're gonna have a backup match for you. We have drolicheck versus mgallop here, which is gonna be an Elysian Mirror.
It could be lots of fun, and it's definitely lots of fun. We see several cockroaches down. There is that new 3/3. What is that card called? The Venom Rider is down.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's played. It hasn't played its Bridled Sandstrider yet, but it's looking pretty crazy. mgallop has a crown down, so it's getting lots of interesting Aegis effects. This is a fun board. I'm pretty excited by this. I Am the Abductor is for some reason. Why is I Am the Abductor in Drolicheck's hand? Is this an Elysian matchup, or is this a 3-color matchup where Drolly
all I know is that it doesn't have any influence requirement, so I'm not sure how it got in his hand. I'm gonna have to take a look at lists.
Struggling to Oh no, it's got to be Equivocate. Yeah, Equivocate. Sweet. We've seen an Equivocate played, and it's given Drolly, unfortunately, one of the best 3-drops in the game. But a Disjunction knocks out Xenon Obelisks, and now mgallop has a fairly decent board against his opponent. And he's still playing Crown Roaches, so there's a lot of gas here. Oh, one of them's got Lifesteal Killer. That's brutal. My.
As the resident Crown meme overlord here, how do you think this matchup is playing out?
I mean, at this point, mgallop has seized the lead. Like once you're playing this many Crown Roaches, it's pretty hard to deal with it. drolicheck does have a slight advantage here in that Daraka and Predatory Carnosaur are both very proactive 6-drops. And that means that he's going to be able to kill some of these Aegis units and potentially get through with his Cersos. The problem is that the Crown Vic player is at 27 health, and that means that he's able to take a couple of attacks, he's able to take some minor trades, and he's just going to increase in value from here.
Yeah, Predatory Carnosaur always has been the best 6-drop as far as proactive plays, and Daraka is basically another Carnosaur in this situation. So drolicheck definitely has the best hand he could have for this, but there's a lot going on that Crown side.
Let them feel your sting. Bridled Sandstrider is a card that has been specifically balanced to be a 5 cost as opposed to a 1 cost, which is more common of the Vermin. I think that's a really interesting thing, just because you can do things like if you get into trouble with it, you can equivocate it into a 5-drop.
Oh man, well you also can't Shadowlands guide it, which would have been sweet.
Yep, and we see that was a weird exchange there. What just happened? I think the Carnosaur died to a Thunderstrike Dragon. Yeah. Looks like he had a little bit of an advantage there, so got most of what he needed out of it.
So he's gonna go just to play his Temple Scribe, maybe just play Ion, play his 6-drops next turn, hoping to get some, get to a point where he can play 2 cards a turn potentially or something like that.
Yeah, mgallop's sitting on all of his Crown Roaches, and Drolly has the ability to continue to aggress here. Oh gosh, it's a double damage Venom Rider though. That's going to be a big issue here because it is going to kill off other cards in drolicheck's board. So there's a lot here that could go wrong.
The thing that's really, I think, keeping drolicheck in the game is these 2 Cersos, because they don't care about any of these Crown Roach shenanigans unless the Roaches start getting Aegis, at which point drolicheck is going to find himself in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, so Drolly can't really play Daraka here just because the Sandstorm Rider is threatening to kill it and release whatever it is that Daraka's got. The Permafrost here knocks 1 Cerso out of the way, and with the sting being felt, we're going to see something else die. So this board's starting to look pretty bad. mgallop could actually start aggressing here if he wants to, although he would lose some Crown Roaches in the bargain.
Yeah, this is just such a crazy matchup right now.
Okay, there's the IN. So Equivocate has given Drolly another lease on life and a 9/9, but I don't think that that's actually improving his situation all that much.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's in Gallop's hand, but I feel like with all the Echo cards and another Equivocate, okay. Well, there goes
Cerso's back in hand and is now Withering Witch.
That's a real card.
Yeah, that's actually not too bad here. I don't think it really does a lot for Drolly because Drolly just doesn't have a way to activate it. But if he's running Hailstorms in the deck, he might have a chance of suddenly randomly stabilizing off of Equivocate.
If he wasn't about to lose his entire board here, it would be cool. But yeah, it's not going to do anything next turn.
Yeah, we're looking for Drolly to draw the Hailstorm here just for the delightful.
If we see Elysian mid-range Hailstorm Witch somebody, I don't know. I guess I had thought I'd seen it all, but
I'm a little skeptical of this walk with the Reliquary Raider, but he probably doesn't have a choice. There's just too much stuff attacking in, and he needs to keep his life total relatively high. The draw off Reliquary Raider maybe is only out, though. So how much damage is he taking right now? 15, 19, 21? Yeah, he had to block with the Reliquary Raider. Blocking the 1/1 with it might have been the best option, but there's not a lot of good choices.
Okay, so I am taking a look at drolicheck's list, and there are 4 Hailstorms in the sideboard. They could be in there. I mean, I don't know that he brings them in versus this matchup, but if he does, they're in there.
Yeah, so could be that Witch Storm. That'd be pretty cool. Yeah, I think that overall this is looking very, very bad for Drolly, as it has been for like the last 10 turns. But all of the stuff finally goes in. There's a lot of damage dealt, and Withering Witch is not going to stabilize. So this looks like the game. The Witch Storm would just wipe his entire board.
There were a lot of turns there where Crystallize would have won the game for drolicheck, but he never found it. Didn't find Wish Storm, his super out, and Clockroaches just has the late game on Elysian mid range.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, there are not many decks that beat Clockroach for late game. I think it is one of the strongest late games in the game. It's just that the early game is so unreliable.
Yeah.
And some of the mid game is as well, because once you get the crown down, you still have to get the right crown pulls.
Yep, definitely. So that's going to be mgallop taking it 2-1 over drolicheck in the Elysian Mirror, the Clockroaches versus mid-range.
Yep, we see some of the great benefits and the great detriments of Equivocate in that matchup. I think it's still a really interesting card, and I'm pretty excited to see more of that.
Does Equivocate work the way you think it does with what's the card that lets you Mind Link with Mind Link?
Oh yeah, you absolutely get a Mind Link copy.
So you know what card is in their hand then?
Yeah, you know what card is in their hand, and you get a copy of it. So
okay,
you probably get to play that copy first, depending on how early you cast the Equivocate and what you cast it on.
That is very important information. I'm sure it will be relevant in my latter experience. But I think that is the last matchup that we're going to take a look at for this round. So before we go to a break, let's just talk for a brief moment about the ETS, which is what you're watching right now. If you like the ETS and want to participate, you are welcome to. It is an open tournament. We have them just about every Saturday. We have 4 seasons in a year, so 4 seasons this year, leading up to 2-day invitational tournaments every 2.5 months or so, with a cash prize of at least $250. And the next invitational is actually next weekend. So your last chance to get into that is the LCQ tomorrow, which is also free to sign up for. And our invitationals lead up to an annual championship with a $3,000 prize pool. So, free to enter, a lot of fun. Maybe you'll be on stream, maybe you won't. Maybe you'll win. We've had players many times enter their first ETS and place in the top 8. So nothing to lose. Come hang out with us, even if you don't want to play. Come hang out in the streams and things like that. So I look to see everyone here and new people tomorrow and next week.
Yeah, it's going to be an exciting time, and definitely continue to show up, because there's a lot of cool decks out there, and hopefully there'll be a lot more cool ones as this new Dead Reckoning meta advances.
And with that, we're going to see you guys in round 3.